So this is Adobe Premiere, Premiere Pro to be exact. And we're not going to use this software that much, but we will be using it for some editing of video files that you might actually obtain, record yourself, or be using for demos. So essentially this is, unlike After Effects, this program is for cutting, doing some editing. If you have finished pieces and you just want to splice them together, or you're just cutting them down so that you don't have these huge files that you want to pull into After Effects, this is where you want to go to. You can pull it straight off of a camera, or you can just drag the files in. So if I just say I want a new project, and I would give it a name, and make sure that you pick your location. I'm using a different drive and just throwing everything into temp, so I know that all the stuff in temp I can just delete out because I'm just kind of screwing around and showing things with it. I have a NVIDIA video card, and by default it should automatically do this. It's set to GPU acceleration using what's called the CUDA cores, these special cores inside of a GPU, particularly NVIDIA GPUs, that will actually use that to speed up certain programs like this, as well as Maya and Unreal and all sorts of things. Scratch disk defaults to the same drive as your project, and we're just going to go from there. So I hit OK. And then it sets up my project inside of that folder. So a quick run through. Like I said, we're not going to be using it this much, but I just want to show you how to do some quick editing. So at the top, we have different workspace configurations depending on what we want to do. Recoloring footage, effects. This is also a way, if you've got footage, it's the only one you have, and you want to tweak it out, you can go in and add saturation and stuff, add effects. Editing is what we're going to be doing, but there's also assembly. So let's just go to editing, because that's what we're going to be doing. Gives me a nice wider timeline. Gives me my effects and stuff over here. Let me just pull this so that I could actually add transitions or different pre-made effects, blur, and all kinds of stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in. So if I have a folder of different recordings, and I'm taking it onto my other screen, but if I go in and I can just drag it in to my timeline, it'll import that video in, and here we have a representation of it. And I can scrub through it to see it. Much like in After Effects, or whatever, I can hit spacebar on it, and these are just some logos that I've created to start and stop the video, or I can scrub in it. I'm not going to be using these guys that much, so I'm just going to pull this over. But I can also say, oh, if I have something selected, what it is. This is how it's laid out in the timeline, and I'm going to pull this over because then it makes it a little bit easier. These are the tools I use to affect the video. In this video I brought in, there's a video track and an audio track. I can bring in other tracks if I want to overlap them, so maybe I want to add some background music. I could just drag that in, an audio file, a wave or something, and just drop it in. And with each of these tracks, I can actually adjust it. So just real fast, the biggest thing you're probably going to use this for is if you get a video and you decide you only want maybe a certain section of that video. Maybe it's just like from here to here or something like that. Or you want to trim off the back, like, oh wow, I got everything, or the front, right? So you can slice up the video where you want. I could put I could scrub to the moment that I would want to actually adjust this and say, wow, you know what, I want to do a cut right there. Right now I'm using my select tool. But I can go down, and if I just want to make a cut there, I can actually go down to the razor blade, this little razor tool. And when I get that, it allows me, and you see it snaps to wherever that is, and I can just cut it. And I could cut more sections if I wanted to. And what it does, let's go back to the selection tool, is now the white or light gray, light gray, is highlighting what's selected. Everything else will be this bluish color. And so if I decide, wow, you know what, I don't want that, or maybe it's this section right here I don't want to have, I could just select that now and hit delete. Now, of course, this leaves me this big gaping hole in between. That would be weird. So I could grab these and then just, oh, I'll snap that and then grab that. But if you have multiple sections or you're splicing something together inside of here, that's going to be a little bit of a pain. So I'm going to undo. Let me select this, right click, and say ripple delete. So I've selected that section I want to get rid of. I want to have all the following sections just snap over. I right click on the section I want to get rid of, pulls up this menu, and I say ripple delete. And bam, not only did it get rid of it, but it took all those. I could have had a dozen sections and it just nicely slammed them, snapped them together. So it just goes from one to the other. And you can see that works out really well. Okay. As well as I could get rid of other sections that are here. Now, once I've gotten this down, and like I'd said, it's like, oh, once I have the video, I can go to the color menu if I wanted to say like, wow, this one needs to have some adjustments, or and you could see all to the right, I had those different things I could do. Plus, now it moved the effects tab, which was down here, up here. We can also, with the project, you can have a before-after look of what you're doing. This is if we were focusing primarily on editing the audio. So it gives me a lot more control and pulls up the menus to adjust the audio, because sometimes you'll have audio that you're trying to put, like if I did want to put background music, then I might not want it as loud and competing. So if I dropped it in, once it's selected, I could actually go in and drop down the volume of that particular section, and that would actually work out as well. Or maybe I want to add titles. But all this stuff I would actually do just straight inside of After Effects. There we go, and we're good. So let's say I've dropped this down. This is what I want, and I want to spit this out. Okay, so the way of spitting this out, oh, and just so you can see, when I put my cursor over things, you'll see it tells me what these are. And by default, you typically want to keep most of these things on, like the snapping, so that you can make sure that they snap to each other properly. And you can add important markers. Oh, right here is when I'm supposed to put a sound, so I'll click. I just do that, and I can add a little marker on that. And you can see the markers popping up here. See? And then I could just click on it to snap to that point. Once I have this all set and I'm ready to spit it out, so that I can pull it into After Effects and do all sorts of cool things with it, I just go to File, Export. If I save, I'm going to save a Premiere project, and that's an editing. It's the Premiere equivalent of a Photoshop PSD file. So all I want to do, I mean, if I'm going to continue to edit this, I'd save it as a Premiere file or as a Premiere project. But if this is all I wanted to do, I'm just going to go in and export media. And it's going to pull up my export settings. And just to keep things consistent, because you can get lost in all of these different settings, I would actually go in here and make sure, let's see, my format, H.264, match source high bit rate. Here's my output name, so I could change it. So I'd click on that, and it'll give me a little menu and say, hey, where are you saving this, and what's the size, and all that good stuff. And you just tell it what it is. Give it a different name. Don't overwrite the source file. Sometimes it's good to have an actual output folder inside of wherever you're saving your things, and that way the smaller cut versions or the edited versions go into the output, and that way if you have to go back, you don't have to refilm or re-render anything. You just go back and then you can adjust the original files. You want to keep your original files as long as you need to. So I set that up to save. A quick easy way, I want to export the video and the sound. If I don't have those both checked, like if I said video only, it's going to drop the sound out entirely. And down here, I just usually look, if you click match source, it's essentially going to try to match the output exactly with how the input was, so that you don't have to say, well, how many frames was a second, and what was the resolution? And we could see right here a summary. If you see this off, you want to double check, because if you use some of the presets they have, it's automatically going to try and lower the resolution or compress it a whole lot. And what's going to happen is your source might be 1920 by 1080, and then all of a sudden your output is 640 by 480, and you won't be able to blow it up full screen without it looking really, 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 really pixelated. So match the source. That looks good. Bitrate, good. Audio, AAC. Sample rate 4800. Stereo. Audio quality. Whoops. Put you back to normal. Accidentally did that. And that's all lovely. So we're all good. If I had multiple movies, I'd put them in the queue, and then I could just set it up and let it, spit them all out. Since it's just one file, I would just hit export. And then it's just going to take a few minutes, and it does take a few minutes to spit that out. And then that will be the file that you would then pull into After Effects, so that we can actually mess with it in there. So you would just hit export, and then it would go through this. It also gives you a relative estimate of how big the file size is going to be, and it gives you a limit of how long it's going to take. So the longer the footage, of course, and the more compression, the longer it takes for this process. I'm just going to cancel because I don't really need it. I just wanted to show you how to do it. And that is pretty much it. So once again, Premiere for cutting up video, getting rid of some extra footage, stripping out audio, or just putting things, a few different clips together so that you can match it. It's also kind of good if you're matching it with a soundtrack or something like that, and you're just going to spit the whole movie out. And it does have effects for titling and things like that.